Sporting a badge and seeking some brains. Here's a look at the new Boss Fight Studios Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S Series Z Officer Zed Police Zombie. Casualties among those who promised to protect and serve were high. In the early days of the outbreak, calls to respond to domestic disturbances and street fights peaked. Not knowing what these calls truly represented, oftentimes police officers found themselves at the scene of a zombie attack without backup, which was likely engaged elsewhere, responding to similar instances. More and more police were bitten. Sometimes these men and women, not knowing that the scratches they had picked up on duty were infected, would go back to their daily lives, put in their patrol shifts, and finally, weeks afterwards, go berserk in their precinct. It is not uncommon to find these police zombies stumbling around, armed to the teeth, and weapons they have forgotten how to maintain and fire, mindlessly walking their old patrol routes in search of victims. Before we go patrolling with these police of purgatory, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S Series Z Officer Zed actually stands. Wow, that's a mouthful. We're going to take the tape measure right to the very top of his head, and while we're doing this, I'd like to thank the folks over at Boss Fight Studios that provided the sample of Officer Zed. Do you mind if I call you Officer Zed? It's not responding. That we could have a look at in this review. Like I said, taking the tape measure right to the very top of his head and reading it to you, the viewing audience. Officer Zed from Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S Series Z stands 4.1 inches in height. We can switch that over to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 10.6, or a little over 10.5 centimeters tall. The Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S, or Highly Articulated Character Kit System, have always been known for having lots of accessories to come include with their micro-sized figures. And certainly, when we have a look at Officer Zed, you'll see they've carried that trend on rather nicely in a more gruesome-looking presentation. Starting first to come include with Officer Zed, just love the fact they call him Officer Zed, he comes include with a display stand. It's all molded here in gray plastic, has some nice detailing to it, sort of mimics what you would imagine him walking around outside, stumbling around, not sure what he's wanting to do. It seems like this could be perhaps like a manhole cover up the top corner. You can see accented on both sides of it are pegs of two different lengths. I'm not really sure what these peg holes are for. You could say bullet holes, but I think they serve a bigger purpose than that. Perhaps they interlock with another Vitruvian H.A.C.K display stand. I'm not really quite sure, but it doesn't seem to serve a purpose, at least when it comes to Officer Zed. Move that to the side. Comes included with a whole bunch of, like I said, swappable accessories, and that's the fun thing that gets with these Vitruvian H.A.C.Ks is the fact that you can sort of mix and match, change component pieces out, and really customize these the way that you want. Having a look at some of his other accessories, he comes included with a little stock pistol. Molded here in black plastic, of course, but you can see there's some rather slimy-looking sediment left behind on the side of the gun. Really like those little touches like that. Now, granted, they could have easily just left that off clean, but I'm liking the fact that they actually took the time and painted little details like this, so you know who the gun belongs to. You can either put this in his existing, well, not necessarily his existing hands. He actually comes with a couple of swappable hands suited for those jobs. He comes with one specifically designed for holding the gun, as you can see with the trigger finger all slimy and caked in blood. And then he also comes with another one that's, I guess, got the same similar sort of shape and molding to it. All you have to do is take the figure. Obviously, you know where this is going to be going. Take the hand and just remove it from the sockets. I was a little concerned, actually, the size of these pegs, having run into, not necessarily boss fight releases in the past, but smaller scale figures are always a little bit more problematic when it comes to removing their pegs. But, you know, surprisingly, I had so much of an easy time removing these hands, even like removing the head, which we'll talk about in a second. But we're going to go ahead and just take the replacement hand, of course, fit that into the open now hole, and just twist that in place. If you find you're having a tough time getting it back in place, I find it helps just to twist it back and forth. Navigate it back into the socket like that. We can also do the exact same thing. Why not do the exact same thing on the other side? He has certainly enough accessories going for him. And we'll just repeat the process. Twist and finally get that inside the peg hole like that. Once you got those hands in place, then of course you can take the pistol, fit it into his smaller sized hands. There we go. And you can have him holding the pistol this way. Oh, but wait, there's more. You can also take the pistol, remove it from his slimy grasp, and fit it inside a holster located on the side of his belt. I like that they have little storage places to hold these accessories. You'll also see alongside the holster there's a little extra hole opening. What's that hole opening actually for? Let's put the figure down right here. Segueing ourselves over to the next accessory that we can have a look at. The officer does come included with a nightstick. Again, looks like it's been handled at least after his death. And again, you can either put that into his hand or picking the figure up again. Located right to the side of the holster. I just told you it was right there. There's a little hole right there, and you can take the nightstick and slide it down. Now, these easily could have been things that they could have just molded to the belt, although, admittingly, yes, the nightstick probably would have been a little bit more of a hassle to deal with, certainly when it comes to the figure's articulation. But again, I like the fact that they include that. He does technically also have, let me just move his arm out of the way. Sorry, Officer Zed. He does also have a flashlight, but the flashlight is permanent. It's molded to the rest of his belt. At least he does come with a couple of things that can be holstered and removed, again, depending on how you want to display the figure for yourself. Oh, it's such a cool looking figure. You know how I feel about zombies. Next up, we'll have a look at a shotgun that seems to have a light lamp or torch or flashlight underside there as well. And again, it's caked and covered in guts, blood, and all the other things you would imagine a zombie would come across during its daily travels. And again, it's all molded here in black plastic. But that little bit of paint, that little bit of love that gets grace to the plastic, boy, that is a nice little touch. And again, you can display that into the figure's hands if you want to. The dearly departed officer also comes included with a swappable head sculpt you'll see currently in my hand right now. I can't quite place whether this is supposed to be the exact same officer, or if just the requirement at the precinct is that every single officer that works there has to have the exact same hairstyle. You can see right there. There's definitely a notable difference between the two. The stock head that's currently sitting on the neck does have the open mouth, and does also have a very large gashed wound on the top of the forehead. Although to be fair, this one does seem to have that as well, but really the difference is the mouths. We're going to go ahead and swap the head sculpts off. I just love the gray color that they've used for these really true zombies. They've also added a dark wash of black just to accent the areas around the eyes and the areas around the cheeks. It almost seems like the eyes are glowing too. Boy, that does ever look great. But to swap the head sculpts off, I'm just going to put this one down for the time being. I'm going to go ahead and remove this one from the neck. Another good way to kill a zombie. You'll probably think to yourself, oh no. He left the ball peg still stuck inside the top of the head. How are you going to remove it now? Well, you don't have to, actually. I'm going to put this head sculpt down for the time being. This is something I really like that Boss Fight is doing with their figures. They have both the head sculpts with ball pegs, so you don't have to worry about trying to fish these out. A lot of times you only have one, and if you're lucky enough, it still stays in the neck, but a lot of times it ends up getting rooted into the head, and then you have to go and fish this out. You don't have to do that, and I'm glad that Boss Fight is doing that with pegs on each one of the heads. It's really a nice touch on their part. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and snap this back down on the neck. Just a little bit of force required. And you've got this stock head now instead. Just to last show you guys the difference between the two head sculpts. I guess you could say really that this swappable head is a little on the shorter side. Although again, you could chalk it up to the fact that this one does have the mouth open. Both are great looking head sculpts and warranting getting more than one of these. So you can customize your figures and have different looking officers. Doesn't just stop there, though. Boss Fight also includes an officer's hat. It's about the only thing, actually, that comes with the figure that's still clean. There's no blood or anything on it whatsoever. And all you do is just fit this over top of the head. And you've got this look right now. And then when you consider it, getting more than one of these, some with the officer's hat on, some with the two swappable heads, you can have really like 3 or 4 different looks for these figures. The last thing that comes included with this, and this is rather interesting as well, and talking about customizing, if you look at the lower leg, specifically I'm drawing everyone's attention to this thigh right here, they actually included a secondary thigh piece. What's involved is actually just to remove the leg from the peg inside here, and then you have to remove the knee from this part right here, and then reattach it, sort of like rebuilding your G.I. Joes, probably something that all of us did back in the 80s. Well, that's interesting. And it does give you a little bit more customization at play. Again, it just involves you unpegging this right off, replacing with this part right here, and then just reattaching the knee and the lower leg, basically everything from the knee down onto the bottom of the thigh. I think that's really clever the way they've done that. Now that we've finished having a look at the things that come included with Officer Zed, let's get a closer look now at the figure itself. There would certainly be no disputing the fact that this officer is clearly dead, judging by the fact he's got this darker gray skin, and all the stuff that is painted really well. Let's go ahead and just twist that hint just a little bit more in to make sure that's fully in there. It does have some really gruesome looking gore all over the place, blood smeared across, and it seems actually there's a couple little places that I mistakenly think are handprints, and I think it's just more the shape of it than anything else. You can see even for the smallest of details have been painted on really nicely, like the officer badge, the patches on the side. So clear, in fact, that you can actually make out that it says police, with a little star down below and department right above that. It has it actually on both sides. And again, you've got the little bullet holes and you've got blood all over the body. I love the fact that when they applied the blood, they applied it with a sheen. So it has a nice light reflecting off of it look to it. One thing I also really like about these figures is that the plastic feels good. Sometimes when you get a figure that's 3 3/4 inch scale, sometimes the plastic feels soft or it feels almost a little brittle. But I actually find that the plastic on these figures are really super durable. It was probably recommended to heat these up, but I actually didn't even do that. I took the figures out of the packaging, and I sort of just do what I always do. I just slowly start navigating and moving the joints for myself, working the elbows slowly. But if you are somebody that wants to pick these ones up and a little worried about the joints and stuff like that, yeah, by all means, just take a hairdryer, heat up the joints. Or you could submerge some of them in hot water, just enough to soften up those joints. I can tell you, though, taking this figure out of the packaging, just doing what little I did to actually just move the joints around freely, I didn't have any issues really with the figure after that. But the plastic feels really good and solid. It's a good quality plastic that they're using for these figures. Something you're probably already seeing as I'm spinning the figure around is there's a peg located on the back. Doesn't really serve a purpose necessarily with the officer here, but I guess if you had a backpack, probably with another Vitruvian, you could easily just attach that on the back of his torso. That's what I would imagine that's for. It's a pretty clean looking figure. The only place that isn't necessarily clean is the visible screw hole that's located on the back. You can see there's a screw tightened in place. But really, technically, the belt fits over top of that, so you're really not going to see it. Scrolling a little bit further down, again, you've got this nice blood smeared all over the place. I really like the blue that they used as well. It's like a really dark metallic blue. It has a sheen going for it, and yet it doesn't compete enough with the shininess of the red. It really is a nice looking figure painted. Okay, Officer Zed, let's get a closer look at your poseability. So we have already swapped out the head, so you already know that there's a ball peg working behind the scenes there, rooted at the top of the neck. Again, I love the fact that the heads have their own independent ball pegs when you remove them. But because of that, the head does move down, quite a bit actually, up, and you can also sway it back and forth to get that classic look on the zombie. You can also move the arms out, as they do have their own peg hinge joints that allow the arms to move out like this, beyond the point of a 90-degree angle bend. Man, it looks a little strange, yes, granted. But the arms do rotate also all the way around. You can do the exact same on both sides. Joints are super tight on this figure. Well, comfortably tight. Not tight to the point where you feel like you're forcing against them, but tight enough that they don't feel loose when you get them out of the packaging. Again, if you're a little bit cautious about starting to tackle these right away, just take a hairdryer. Heat up the areas, the joints that you think are going to be the most problematic, or again, submerge it in hot water, just enough to soften up those pegs. The elbows do hinge back and forth. While you're doing this the few couple of passes, you'll notice that there's a little bit of paint that will flake off, but at least the plastic that's underneath it isn't a different color, or not too an extreme different color that you're going to notice it once that paint starts flaking off. But like I said, the arms do rotate all the way around. You can hinge those elbows back and forth, and yes, you can rotate the hands all the way around. Now, when it comes to his upper torso, if you probably were suspecting that he would have a ball joint at the top, a ball joint at the bottom, it seems like he only has just the one. This whole section here seems to be just one piece. And I think that's not necessarily something that sets this figure back. In fact, the upper torso ball joint, I feel, is more than enough to still get the perfect look that you can get for those zombies, just like having the torso slightly swayed off to the side like this. But this technically will allow you to rotate this all the way around. Up, down, and of course all the other things that go along with a ball joint. As for the legs, you can pull off a successful splits. You can bring those legs forward and back, fine and good. There is a swivel, and it's only swiveled really by the way it's attached to the ball peg right rooted inside his lower torso. It does have a double hinge on the knee. And when it comes to his foot articulation, you can also move it back and forth, up and down. And then last, of course, and certainly not least, he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet, going along with that display stand we already had a look at before. This certainly has a lot going for it. The plastic feels good, the joints feel solid, and the sculpt looks super cool on this zombie. Because it also does have swappable components to it. You can either decide for yourself to display it with or without the officer's hat, with or without this specific head sculpt, and with a ton of accessory to come included with it. I think Officer Zed is a home run hit. Sadly for Officer Zed, there's going to be no retirement party, no gold Rolex watch, no fishing his afternoons away. He lived and died on patrol, and at least has blessed us now with a pretty nice 3 3/4 inch police zombie that we can put on display. If you have collected Vitruvian hacks, you already know by now the kind of quality you're going to be getting from Boss Fight Studios. A super detailed, super painted figure that has all the articulation one would expect with a larger scale figure, small, compact, and in that 3 3/4 inch size. Officer Zed does have the swappable head sculpts, which are really nice, and I love again the fact that they include ball pegs with both the heads, so you don't have to worry about, I've had that happen to me enough times already, removing a head from one figure to only find later I have to get a pair of pliers and try to fish that ball peg back out. You don't have to do that with these smaller scale figures from Boss Fight. It does have some swappable hands, a whole ton of accessories, and a display stand to boot. He is a nice looking police zombie figure that you can put on display. If you like zombies, of course. I love zombies, so this is certainly right up my alley. A big thank you again to the folks over at Boss Fight Studios that provided this sample copy of the Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S Series Z Officer Zed Police Zombie. A great looking figure. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of Officer Zed. And certainly if you are new to this channel and enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Turn the bell notification on, and yes, keep your zombie peepers peeled, because not only are we going to be looking at some other reviews, but we are also going to be looking at some more Vitruvian hacks. So if this is the kind of thing that you guys like to see on this channel, keep your peepers peeled, like I said, because there's definitely going to be a lot more coming your way. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.